Hi, today we're going to make an app with using App Inventor to calculate the distance between 2 points given their latitudes and longitude. So first we go over here to New, and we're going to call this Lat Long Distance Calculator. First thing we want to do is we want to title our screen. So we're going to call this same thing, lat long distance calculator. Now what we want to do is we want a label and a text box for each point. And there's actually 2 points per point because we have latitude and longitude. So what we want is we want a label and a text box for each number that we're going to input. So since we have a latitude and a longitude for both points, that's 4 numbers that we're going to input. Now I'm going to use just a plain label to designate the point 1. And then I'm going to use a horizontal screen arrangement to keep my labels and my text boxes together. And I'm going to go ahead and make that to fill the parent. So I want a label and I want a text box. For each point. So that's 1. I'm going to go and get all these in first, and then I'm going to go back and label them. Okay, so this is going to be for the longitude for point 1. So we want a label and a text box. There we go. Okay, now we want just a label to go to point 2. Let's go ahead and change that. Okay, and we want a horizontal screen arrangement, and we're going to have that go across the width of whatever device we happen to be using. We go back up to basic, grab a label and a text box, put it right there. And we want another horizontal screen arrangement. And fill the parent. In other words, go across the device that we're using. And go back up to basic and grab our label and our text box. Now I'm going to pause the video and go through and label all these in our typical naming convention. And I'll go through the first one here. I'm going to there we go. Okay, you have to select it in the components viewer, and you go down here to rename. Now remember our naming convention, labels are LBL. And we're going to call this lat1. Okay. And then we're going to rename the text box TXT lat1 box. Put the box on there so we know that's an input or an output. And I'm going to go through and do these. This will be for the longitude for point 1. The horizontal arrangement 3 will be for the latitude for point 2, and then for the longitude for point 2. So you go ahead and do yours too while I have, and we'll get back in just a Okay, also what I am doing is I'm going through the properties panel for each one, and for the text boxes, I am taking out what's in the hint, because that will show up on your app. Okay, and I've done that for all of the text boxes. first ones I've gone through and changed their text in the property view panel too, and I have this labeled it latitude for first point. This one is, and I've gone through. The second one would be longitude for the first point, latitude for the second point, longitude for the second point. So that shows up over here on their labels. So now that we have our components renamed so that when we get to the blocks editor, we are able to easily pick out which ones are which, so that we can code them programmatically to do what we want them to do. And we have also changed their names in the text property in the properties panel so that it shows up on the device as what it is. Okay, so now we're going to need a submit button so that once all these numbers are put in, we can tell the device, okay, now go call your procedure and do the calculations. So we drag a button over now, make it the width of the device because we have a rather long title. So our title is Calculate Distance. Okay, we have our submit button, and now we want boxes for the output. We want labels too, so that the output has a place to go. And we're going to calculate the distance between the 2 points in feet, in miles, and in kilometers. So we need another series of horizontal arrangements. Now we're going to want a label to put the unit of measurement we're using, and also we're going to need a label so that the program has a place to put the calculated distance. So within each horizontal screen arrangement, we're going to want 2 labels. Okay, we go back up to basic, and we want 2 labels for each one. As you can see, the height is adjusting accordingly. We want to put our unit of measurement as the second. So we're going to put that as feet, and then the second one is miles and the third one is kilometers. In the first box, we are going to just put question marks, and they will be changed to what the computer output is after it does the calculations. And now accordingly, I am going to change the labels in the component viewer so that when we go to the blocks editor, programming the code or using the blocks will not be a problem. And this one we're going to rename. We're going to call it the label feet. And so I'm going to pause the video and go ahead and rename everything in the component panel as well as in the property panel, and then we'll get going again. Okay, as you can see, I've renamed all my labels in the component panel so that coding these blocks when we go to the blocks editor won't be a problem. And that doing the property panel, I've changed the text so that we know what we're talking about as far as unit of measurement is concerned. So let's go over to the blocks editor and begin programming or coding our blocks. Now if we look under our My Blocks, we see all of the objects that we are using for our app. And we have all of our horizontal arrangements here. The button is our submit button. And let's go back real quick and select that. Let's call it button submit. There. Now back over to the blocks editor, and you see it's changed its name. Now we also have our labels for our output numbers, and these we also have our labels for our latitude and longitude. Green blocks, while we're talking about it, are event handlers. That's where you select your event. Say we want to go back up here, and when our button is clicked, then we want to set our variables to what is in the text boxes that is on our screen that the user input. So what we do, back to built-in definition, and this is where we define our variables. And we need 4 variables defined. We need to know the Earth's radius. We need to know how many feet are in a mile. We also need to know how many kilometers are in a mile. And then we need an output variable, distance in miles. And that is where we're going to start. And we want a number, that's that. And since that is an output variable, we're going to initialize that to the value of 0. Now these other ones we can select, Control C, and then Control V, 1, 2, 3, and we have all of our numbers. Let's go ahead and plug those in. Now let's change the numbers. Let's click once, and this is the Earth radius in miles. And actually, typically, the very first letter of a variable is small, and the rest of them are capitalized. That's what they call camel case. And there are 3,959 miles that comprise the Earth's radius. Now let's go to variable 2. That is going to be our feet per mile. And there are 5,280 feet in a mile. We want to declare our kilometers per mile as 1.609344. Usually in scientific calculations you go for where's my 9? There's my 9. You go for 6 digits of precision, they call it, scale of precision. And our last variable we initialize to 0. Our output variable is distance in miles. There we go. Okay, now let's go back over to my blocks, and we see under my blocks, my definitions, we see our variables. Now we can set our variables to a certain thing, and then we can, when we call what value is in the variable, we use the global with the solid edge. Setting the variable, though, is what we want to do. We want to set our distance in miles. Here we go. And we want to call a procedure. And procedures are a set of specified tasks that we program, so we have to go over and define it. And we want to return a value, so we're going to use this purple block. And we can put it over here to the bottom or off to the side. Okay, we're going to call our procedure distance between lat and long, because it's going to calculate the distance for us. Okay, so let's go ahead and program our procedure. Now it's going to take in 4 arguments, and that are the 4 names of our lat and long. So we need name variables. There we go. And that's going to be 1, 2, 3, one more. There we go. And let's go back through. Left click each one and name them. The first one's going to be lat 1. And left click the second one, long 1. And do the same for the other. Into our definitions, we notice that now our call box has those arguments programmed in it for as sockets to be filled so that the program can run. Let's go ahead and take that and put it up here as our procedure to call. Now what we're going to plug into those are the numbers that were in the text boxes that the user input. So we go down here and we click on the lat 1 box. And we look at all the selections available to us. These got focus, lost focus, or event handlers that we're not really too concerned with now. There's a procedure. Procedures are purple. Call keyboard. We're going to ignore that for now. And what we want is the text. There we go. And we want what's in the text box at the moment. So we do not want an empty socket. We want this one here. There. And we want the same for the lat 2. So we want what's in that text box at the moment. We don't want another empty socket. And the second one should be the long. Okay, longitude, latitude, longitude, they kind of go together. So text longitude 1 box, and then we put in the text that's in the latitude 2 box, and the text for the longitude 2 box. Okay. Now, we still have work to do on both of these. So the next thing we want to do is set our distance in miles, text, to what's in the global distance in miles. Okay? Then we want to set our distance in feet text to a calculation which is the feet per miles times the distance per miles. So let's go look under math, and there's a mathematical, that's a multiplier. So we do that, then we go up to my blocks, my definitions, and look for our feet per miles right there. And we have a hint here, it wants that straight edge, so let's plug that in there. And then we want our global distance in miles, so that is there. and we want the values that are currently in them, and that's that straight edge. There's no empty socket there. And we also want to do our kilometers. So let's set our kilometers text, and that's going to be another math multiplier, and you can bring those up also by left clicking over here in an empty area and hit math there, and there's the multiplier, and we plug that in, and we want to go to our variables under my definitions, and we want the kilometers per mile with the straight edge because we want the value that's in there because we're setting the text times the distance in miles. Okay, and we are done with what our button is going to accomplish when it's clicked. It's going to call this procedure, which is going to give us the distance in miles. The distance in miles is then going to be used to set the output for distance in miles. It's going to be used to calculate the feet per miles and set that output in that text box. It's going to be used to set, calculate the kilometers per mile and set that text in the output. Now, how's it going to do all that? Well, we have to first define another variable, and that's going to be a temporary variable, and we're just going to call it temp, and it's going to be, we're going to initialize it to number 0. You always have to initialize your variables. So, now we have used the spherical law of cosines to calculate this, and I'm not a math teacher. I gave you the website to go to. I love math, don't get me wrong. But if you want to, I'm just going to plug in the equations. So here we're going to set our global temp, and let us, it'd be under my definitions. So we're looking for our temp variable, and there it is, and we are going to set it to call a very complicated equation. And what it's going to do is we're going to call a cosine, which the degrees is going to be calculated by taking a subtraction of the two longitudes. So then we need that's there, and so we want the values that are what is in our two longitudes, and see we have values here, so we want to take what's in longitude 2 and then the value of what's in longitude 1, and that will do that equation. The next thing we want to do is set our global temp variable to a multiplication equation, which takes the value of our global temp and multiplies it by another multiplication equation. It's like our parentheses, right? Which is the cosine of the value of latitude 1 times the cosine value of latitude 2. Okay, and we have one more of these, and that is we want to set our global variable temp to an addition equation this time. So we want the value that's in global temp right now, which after going through these two is, anyway, and we want to call the sign value of what's in latitude 1 times let's see here. There we go. Okay, now I got my multiplication right. There are it's like my parentheses, right? Okay, to call another sign here. So let's get our math up. There's sign. And what's the value in latitude 2? Okay. And what we're going to return is another equation. It's a multiplication equation with more parentheses again. So what's going to go in the first one is the value that's in the Earth radius in miles. And it's going to convert a procedure. It's just a math procedure. Convert degrees to radians. It's down there, trust me. Which is going to call cosine of what is in our global temp variable. And that is our program. As usual, I'm packaging for downloading to the computer. We have our APK file, and I'm going to save it. And I'm going to copy it over onto my Nexus tablet and get my digital camera and be back with you. Okay, we're back, and we've got our second version here. So we are going to install and open. And as you see, I added some spaces down here so we know it's our correct version. And we're going to go and put in the lat and longitude of, you know. I would love to go visit there, except I understand they're having a lot of landslides from the glacier melting. So actually I used to want to move there, but maybe not so much anymore. Maybe for like summers. Okay, and the latitude and longitude for Tampa, 2794.72, and the longitude is 82.4586. Okay, now let's calculate. And our miles is 3236, which is about correct because I googled it and got 3242, and kilometers are right around the same. So we know we have a good working app now to calculate the distance between 2 points using their latitudes and longitudes. This cosine right here is supposed to be an arc cosine. Let's go back to our math. I knew when I was trying to when I hit that submit button, there we go, and it came up with only 69 miles between Tampa and Juneau, Alaska. Something was seriously wrong.